and the 20 lowest climate risk zip codes. And so this climate crisis, and you've heard me talk about the climate crisis, the housing crisis, the insurance crisis, right now, places like California are ground zero for the convergence of those crises. And people are going to feel it in their pockets. They're going to feel it in the form of their home insurance cost. And so next time you're out at an event, you see an elected official, you may want to ask them, particularly those in the state legislature, what are they doing to bring down the cost of homeowners insurance? Because this is going to be one of the big questions as to, who returns to rebuild what they've lost, right? If insurance companies aren't going to insure you, what are you going to do? That means everybody's not going to be able to afford to rebuild if it happens again. This is an important question, and you better believe we're going to stay on this like a dog on a bone. When we come forward, I'll be joined with Tempe Mayor Corey Woods. That's of Tempe, Arizona. He is a part of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. In fact, he serves on the Community Development and Housing Committee. We're going to be talking about affordable housing. We're going to be talking about the incoming HUD secretary and how Democratic mayors plan to deal or not deal with the Trump administration. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward.
So my home is also my office. And before I can focus, every room's gotta be clean. That means tidying up, then spraying my Febreze Air Mist. Ooh, that's fresh. Febreze Air Mist scents are all high quality. They fight any weird funk, and they give my air an instant boost of freshness. So not only does my home smell good, I feel good too. After I Febreze, it's time to start my day.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it.
I'm Mr. Mayor. I'm well. I'm putting a link in the chat. We're in one room over. And so click on this link and join me next door. We're on the break. We'll be back. Thank you.
Charmin Ultra Strong with diamond weave texture cleans better than the leading one-ply brand, so you can use less. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to self-care and community well-being. Walk Good LA was formed in June 2020, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and the beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. What began as a few minutes of breath work and yoga meditation before protests against police brutality turned into a safe space for the community to heal in hard times. The immensely positive response from the community transformed the momentum into a movement. Today, Walk Good LA is a Black and Brown-led community wellness organization based in Los Angeles. They provide spaces for healing through community yoga classes, guided meditations, hikes, run clubs, and other activations throughout Los Angeles that attract hundreds of members weekly. With the help of Propel and Michael B. Jordan, they now have a yoga and wellness studio in Los Angeles called the Walk Good Yard. To join their mailing list and connect with healing spaces, please visit walkgoodla.org. That's walkgoodla.org. Or find them on Instagram at walkgoodla. This is a community call to action, a community call to healing from KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
Hit me!
National news of consequence, informed opinion,
and analysis beyond the headlines.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and I really enjoy talking to leaders on the front lines. And of all the elected officials that I have a chance to speak to, from the folks in the White House to folks on our school board. So many of you know that I started my career in public affairs, working for a Los Angeles school board member. And so when they say all politics is local, there are no elected officials that understand that better than our mayors. And so it is my pleasure to welcome to the show the mayor of Tempe, Arizona, Corey Woods. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Appreciate you having me.
Well, appreciate having you here. You are not just the mayor of Tempe, Arizona, but you are a leader among mayors across the country. As I mentioned before the break, you are a part of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and specifically, you serve on the Community Development and Housing Committee. At the top of the show, I was talking about this story as reported by The Guardian about U.S. homeowners in disaster-prone states facing soaring insurance costs. Our leaders, learners, and listeners would tell you, I've been talking about this for weeks, how the wildfires in California, for example, really represent a convergence of the housing affordability crisis, the climate crisis, and the insurance crisis. Am I making too much of it, or are you seeing evidence of this across the country? And what are mayors doing to address it?
No, I don't think you're making too much of it at all, quite honestly. I mean, from my perspective, housing is the most important issue that we are currently facing today, not just in the city of Tempe, Arizona, or in the state of Arizona, but frankly, across the country. And so from my perspective, we have to try to find ways to build more housing, to find ways to tackle and address housing affordability. We have more and more people who are working 40 hours a week, but still don't have the ability to rent or own a home in the communities that they live in. And we obviously have a massive supply problem. The number of people who are looking for homes far is outpacing the number of homes that we frankly have available. And I'm talking about in the affordable workforce and market rate categories. We have to find a way to lift some of these restrictions to allow more homes to get built as soon as possible. Because the other problem that we're having when it comes to the lack of homes, and some of the issues you just talked about have exacerbated that issue, is the fact of the matter is, in a supply and demand economy, when there are fewer homes that are actually available for people, the price of the homes that are still out there that exist, frankly, skyrocket and go through the roof. It's almost like, let's just say you're living in an apartment and you're concerned about the rent increase that your landlord is offering you, and you go down to have a conversation about trying to renegotiate that rent. But if they know that there aren't any other apartments in the area of a similar style and similar quality, they will basically tell you, well, good luck finding somewhere, because we frankly know this is probably an empty threat, because you're really not going anywhere because you frankly can't go anywhere. If they know that there are options around the corner and down the street and throughout that city or town that someone could actually move to, that will put more competition into the marketplace and help to stabilize, if not drive down rents, and frankly, the ability for people to get into homes as home buyers. So from my perspective, you're not overstating or overblowing any of this. We have a massive housing crisis in this country, and everyone from mayors to governors to the president of the United States, we all need to be proactively trying to address this.
And so, I mean, just as you laid it out, and I really appreciate you laying it out as you did, are we playing a game of whack-a-mole when it comes to addressing the housing affordability crisis in this country? I mean, again, just focusing in on what's afoot in LA County, for example, where we're seeing, tens of thousands of folks who have become displaced overnight, who are, seeking shelter wherever they can find it and whatever they can afford. We're seeing so many examples of landlords, jacking up rent. For example, we're seeing evidence that the cost of some homes have gone up in certain areas because of the scarcity. And, as goes California, as goes nation. And so, in your opinion, do you think that our fellow Americans in other parts of the country should expect to see more of this coming to a city near them?
I think if we don't do something to address it in the state of California, in the state of Arizona, and across the country, we can't expect to see more of the same when it comes to a lack of housing supply and an increasing lack of housing affordability. But the benefit is, I mean, the real thing we can talk about, though, obviously, is the fact that these are problems that we actually have the ability to solve. It's one of the things that I love when we're talking about housing. But through public policy and through the choices we make when it comes to at the city level, enacting ordinances, or at the state legislature level, creating laws, or obviously in Congress, we have the ability through the choices that we make when it comes to being a public policy making body to address these issues in a proactive and forward thinking fashion. So it's not a situation where we have to sit back and be helpless and say, well, you know, we're not going to be able to find a way to create more housing, or we can't do anything to address the housing affordability crisis. There are absolutely things that we can do, and the power is in the hands of people like me and folks in governments from across the country. Frankly, whether they're in local, statewide, or federal offices, we have the ability and we have the power to address this issue. But let me just say this really quickly as well. One of the things that we're going to have to address, and this is talked about if you Google pretty much any article that talks about the housing shortage. The challenge many times we face is that when you're in communities, the people who are already there, who already own homes or who have been there for 20, 30, 40, maybe even 50 years, they many times bristle at adding more homes. They don't want to add more density. They like the community the way that it was 30 years ago, and they're upset that the council is trying to transform the city that they live in. But the reality is, you are put in these offices not to simply get reelected or to look at your poll numbers or to talk to or to say whatever is told to you in a couple of random focus groups. You're actually elected to solve problems and, more importantly, to do the right thing. And so I've had to approve projects even in my own city of Tempe, Arizona, where I've gotten pushback from residents who said, I don't like the fact that that building is so tall and that there's so many units. I don't like the fact that you're adding all this housing on this corner. I'm concerned about the traffic. I'm concerned about crime. I hear those things all the time. But at the end of the day, if this is a quality project being built by a quality builder, if I have the statistics that prove that it's not going to bring crime, that it's actually not going to increase traffic exponentially in that area. And frankly, putting in an apartment complex is much less traffic than an office building or a grocery store with adjacent retail. If I realize that, and I know the statistics and the data are on my side, and I know that we need the housing, it's up to me and my colleagues here and all elected officials across the country to worry less about getting reelected and to worry more about doing the right thing and setting up our state and our country for future success.
Speaking of doing the right thing, I think a lot of people, when they hear about all the challenges when it comes to housing affordability, I think some people are overwhelmed by it. I think some people are just pulling out their hair, if they have any, about it.
I don't have much of that left over here. So
you and me both. It's more on my face than the top of my head. But you get my point. Can you share with us, some examples of how, you as mayor of Tempe, Arizona, how you're innovating in Tempe, how you are meeting the moment when it comes to this affordability crisis in Tempe, and then wearing your U.S. Conference of Mayors hat, are there certain mayors that come to mind that are at the tip of the spear when it comes to really, being creative and innovative about addressing the affordability crisis in housing?
So a couple of things. With regard to the first portion of your question about what we're doing in the city of Tempe, we have a program called Hometown for All that we created back in January of 2021, which was to find ways to create a dedicated revenue stream to ensure that we could increase the amount of affordable and attainable housing options in our city. And it's proven to be a very successful program. It's only been in existence for about 4 years, but it's already, frankly, done exceptionally well and has become a nationally recognized subsidized program. Also, just this past November 5th, we had a bond election in the city of Tempe, $581 million of bonds that we actually put before our voters for their approval. All three passed. But question number 3 specifically was a question that just specifically talked about $32 million to do nothing but create more affordable housing. And that question got about almost 70% of the vote from those who actually voted in that election. That will give us the opportunity in a landlocked community of only 40 square miles to go out into the market and find additional properties or parcels that might be available, and frankly, acquire those parcels in an ability to create more affordable housing throughout our community. In the city of Tempe, we actually don't own or operate any public housing, but what we do is we acquire parcels, and then we put out what they would call a request for proposals, or RFP, or request for qualifications, RFQ. And so we do basically public-private partnerships to create that affordable housing. So we're basically giving away pieces of land at a very low cost to affordable housing developers to produce truly affordable housing, either for a 30-year period or frankly in perpetuity. So that's what we're doing here in the city of Tempe. But to the second part of your question about, are there other mayors that I have a chance to work with who I know are also doing this kind of work? Well, I mean, first of all, I would mention, my counterpart, Mayor Kate Gallego in the city of Phoenix. She's also been a real champion and a leader when it comes to creating more affordable housing and really leading a strong push for it. I mean, she's the mayor of the 5th largest city in the country. And so the fact that she's providing that kind of leadership, especially to bigger cities, I think really is critically important in setting the right example. And I would also say the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, Andrew Ginther out of Columbus, Ohio. He has made housing the number one issue of his presidency as the leader of the conference. So when you have the mayor who's actually the head of the conference, who's going around the country doing tours of affordable housing projects and talking about the need to craft affordable housing policies that will actually work and build housing faster, not slower. I think that really is a critically important message to send to mayors in communities, both large and small. So if I had to name 2 people, Mayor Gallego and Mayor Ginther are 2 of the folks that I work with most closely.
So it looks like between Tempe, Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, and Columbus, Ohio, if there's some Californians who may be a little fed up, it sounds like there's an informal invitation to consider these cities as your next home while we figure it out in California. When we come forward, we're talking to Mayor Corey Woods of Tempe, Arizona. I want to get his take on some of the latest news coming out of the White House from the Trump administration, and want to get his hot take on what he thinks about the incoming HUD secretary. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward with Mayor Corey Woods.
Enlightened and empowered about issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice. You tuned into the right place. A More Perfect Union continues when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. A new wildfire, the Hughes Fire, has burned 500 acres near Santa Clarita, California, and is 0% contained as crews also battle the Palisades and Eaton fires. Strong winds are pushing flames through canyons and up hills. Former Black Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms is criticizing President Trump for targeting her on social media, noting she had already resigned from the president's export council before he claimed to have fired her. She urged him to focus on global issues instead. The Supreme Court will rule on police immunity in a Houston case where Constable Roberto Felix fatally shot a black driver fleeing a toll stop. The decision could open the door to more excessive force lawsuits. And Reverend Al Sharpton is urging a boycott of companies reversing DEI programs. Speaking at a MLK Day rally, he emphasized King's fight for equality and said the National Action Network will target at least 2 companies within 90 days. I'm Amber Payton on the Black Information Network, your home for Black News First.
Big closure for the 5 freeway. This is both north and southbound due to the Hughes fire. Northbound shut down at Parker, southbound at Grapevine Road. Your alternate for that whole stretch is by using the 14 to the 58 freeway. Now, also, we're looking at the drive elsewhere, Pasadena. This is the 210 eastbound. Delays from Mountain in stretches all the way to Foothill Boulevard. Irvine, the 5 northbound, slowing from the 133 as you travel ahead towards Harbor Boulevard in Anaheim. And Corona, 15 southbound, slows from Magnolia Avenue to Wyrick Road.
Your local Staples has hot deals and super low prices throughout the store on everything for your business. And right now at Staples, save up to $175 off your print order. Exclusions apply. Visit staples.com/print for details. Ends 2/1. Plus, save even more with the Easy Rewards program at Staples.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Boston Celtics are in town this week. They play the Clippers tonight at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. Thursday night, they play the Lakers at Crypto.com. Clippers forward Kawhi Leonard is expected to play tonight. He sat out Monday's loss to Chicago to rest his right knee. Leonard's performance has made a significant jump in his last 2 games. He's averaging 21 points and shooting 70%. The New York Jets have hired Detroit Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn as their new head coach. Glenn's hiring raises the number of black head coaches in the NFL to 5. There were 6 at the start of the 2024 season. The other 4 black head coaches are Mike Tomlin at Pittsburgh, Todd Bowles at Tampa Bay, D'Amico Ryan at Houston, and Raheem Morris with Atlanta. 4 of the NFL's 32 teams are still looking for a head coach: New Orleans, Jacksonville, Dallas, and Las Vegas. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Now that Donald J. Trump has begun a second term as president, please join the Empowerment Congress and KBLA Talk 1580 to examine the question, where do we go from here? Chaos or Democracy? At the Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science. This Saturday, January 25th, some of LA's top elected officials, Representative Sidney Kamlager-Dove, Assembly members Isaac Bryan and Sade El-Hawari will be on hand for what promises to be a lively and informative conversation. Doors open at 8 a.m. The general session, moderated by Tavis Smiley and broadcast live on KBLA Talk 1580, begins at 9 a.m. The event is free, but seating is limited. Registration is required. Go to the Empowerment Congress website at www.empowermentcongress.org to register. Where do we go from here? Chaos or Democracy? Join the Empowerment Congress and KBLA Talk 1580 this Saturday, January 25th. Doors open at 8 a.m. The free program starts at 9 a.m. Registration is required at www.empowermentcongress.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you that we keep us safe. The Live Your Life organization mentors young women, helping them break negative mindsets and see beyond their surroundings. Through career exposure and hands-on training, they're encouraged to think big, stay focused, and make positive choices. Founded by Nikisha Mama Boo Smith, who transformed her life to become a community leader. Live Your Life is changing lives, but they need your help. They're raising funds to keep their new building open and expand their program. Your donations will support food, clothes, hygiene products, and holiday giveaways. Visit liveyourlife32.com. That's LIVEYOLIFE32.com to help today. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Yeah. The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, Black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's cal-cruise-news.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
Now back to building a more perfect union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and I always enjoy speaking to leaders on the front lines, leaders like our nation's mayors, and I'm talking to a really good one. Mayor Corey Woods of Tempe, Arizona. Mayor Woods, before the break, I was teasing you a little bit about work with the incoming administration. ProPublica reported at the end of last year that as Donald Trump's nominee to run the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, Scott Turner, a brother, I think I just want to point that out for our listeners and streamers. Scott Turner may soon oversee the nation's efforts to build affordable apartments to protect poor tenants and aid the homeless. And as a lawmaker in the Texas House of Representatives, it's important that people know that Turner voted against those very initiatives. You see, he supported a bill ensuring that landlords could refuse apartments to applicants because they receive federal housing assistance. He opposed a bill to expand affordable housing, affordable rental housing, that is. He voted against funding public-private partnerships to support the homeless and against two bills that called merely to study homelessness among young people and veterans. And so, Mayor Woods, I've got to ask, how does the U.S. Conference of Mayors intend to work with the incoming HUD secretary, if at all, on the issue of affordable housing? It is an epic crisis in this country, and to have somebody sitting in that seat that opposes so many of the interventions that you and other mayors are leading on, how do you overcome that impasse?
I think it's finding ways to have a conversation with HUD if indeed Mr. Turner is confirmed. I know the vote hasn't taken place yet, but he is currently the nominee. But I think it's trying to find ways to tell stories about the things that we've seen in our own communities when it comes to programs and interventions that have absolutely worked. So as an example, the low-income housing tax credit program. This is something that I have really pushed for additional funding for in the state of Arizona, and obviously something I would encourage the Trump administration to support more when it comes to additional funding. Now, my concern, of course, is during these hearings, he's actually talked about, I don't feel that HUD needs to put additional federal funding into a lot of these programs. He made a comment at one of the Senate confirmation hearings about, well, I basically think that there's already enough money here, and we just have to find a way to streamline what's already there and be a little bit more efficient. I'm paraphrasing. But at the same time, when I look at things like the low-income housing tax credit program, I can tell you about the city of Tempe. Not a single unit of affordable housing would have been built in the last 15 years if not for the presence of that program. And I've spent time talking to state legislators here in the state of Arizona about that program and how critically important it is that we not only extend the program, but that we pump even more money into it because it's been proven to be so successful. Pretty much every affordable housing developer I know utilizes low-income housing tax credits as part of their capital stack to get that project out of the ground. So I think for someone like me, as an example, that's the kind of program that I would clearly go to him and have a conversation about. And I would say, look, I understand your concern about putting in more resources, or you may think the budget's too big. But quite honestly, this program has proven to work from all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast. And if you have facts and data in front of you that shows that this will get more units built, and this will get more projects out of the ground, I would think it's imperative that HUD, frankly, support those programs. I know Mr. Turner has spent some time as a multifamily executive. So clearly he's been in the business of actually building apartment units. So I would hope that he would understand that that if you have these funding streams, especially when it comes to affordable housing, like that low-income housing tax credit, that have actually been proven to work, that he would keep an open mind when it comes to offering more support for programs like those. Obviously, there are other programs I could talk about in those areas. I know he made a comment that I did appreciate about saying we need to find ways to ensure that Section 8 funding, when it comes down, that it's less cumbersome and less burdensome to use, and that we find ways to ensure that the paperwork isn't so excessive that it pushes more landlords to try not to do it. So frankly, I appreciate that approach, but at the end of the day, as you said, you have to square what's being said in the Senate confirmation hearings with some of his past voting record. So I would hope what he's espousing now in terms of an openness to really taking away some of the red tape when it comes to Section 8 funding, which allows a lot of people who are lower income to get into apartments or get into homes. I would hope that he really plans, if he's confirmed, on following through with that. And I would hope that he really would push forward and really seriously consider adding more funding to proven programs like the low-income housing tax credit program.
I mean, one of the things that my grandmother used to point out, and maybe your grandmother, maybe some grandmothers that are listening to us or streaming us right now, is to be aware of folks who are sometimey. And as reported by ProPublica and other outlets, there is evidence of Mr. Turner's record that suggests that at best he's speaking out of both sides of his mouth. For example, he's called welfare dangerous, harmful, and one of the most destructive things for the family. When one interviewer said receiving government assistance was keeping recipients in bondage of a worse form to find oneself in than slavery, Turner agreed, right? And so this is somebody who has a worldview that some might say is antithetical to the mission of HUD. Some people might say is antithetical to the work that leaders like you and so many mayors across the country are leading on. And so I guess what I'm asking for is, what does the U.S. Conference of Mayors, what's sort of the carrots and sticks plan in terms of engaging with not just this HUD secretary, but I suppose, other members of the cabinet who may be at odds with the needs that you all have clearly identified and have been elected to lead on in your communities?
Well, I think it's critically important that we lead with good data and obviously good narrative to back up that data. Many times it depends on who you're talking to, because sometimes there are some people who are more numbers focused and they want to see spreadsheets full of data and numbers and percentages. And there are some people that are much more moved by personal stories and moved by narrative. Look, I mean, the fact of the matter is we have the data that shows that these programs actually work. Mayors are on the ground working with people who are using Section 8 or housing choice vouchers every day. I am on the ground every day, as are other mayors, seeing the needs of people in our community who need quality, affordable, and attainable housing options. So I think it's very critical of us to make sure that we find ways to use both data, but also use personal stories to show people, in the incoming administration and folks who will be at HUD, these programs have actually worked, and we need to actually make sure that they are not only continued, but that they are properly funded. And in some cases, that funding is actually increased for the programs that have obviously done well and have excelled. But I think that's what's really critically important about what we do. I mean, the fact of the matter is we all got to be mayors because clearly to a certain percentage of the people in our respective communities, we were clearly very convincing when we pitched to them what our vision was for our cities and towns. So it's up to us to be just as convincing, if not more, to the incoming Trump administration and to Mr. Turner, if he is confirmed as the new Secretary of HUD, to be even more convincing when using data and narrative about how critically important it is to really continue and expand housing programs that really have worked. Because as we know, once again, we are in a very critical housing supply shortage and a very critical housing affordability issue as well. And so we have to do whatever we can to make the case, and to make the case urgently to the incoming administration and those who might end up at HUD.
Mayor Woods, in our remaining minutes, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, as a mayor in a border state, there was obviously a flurry of executive orders, hundreds of executive orders signed by President Trump, a record number of executive orders, including executive orders challenging birthright citizenship, executive orders empowering, ICE to go after undocumented immigrants and go after them, anywhere and everywhere. Schools, churches, hospitals, weddings, funerals, there is no limit to where he is empowering ICE to go. I want to give you just a moment to share your immediate reaction on the ground from Tempe, Arizona.
Well, I'll take one thing since I know we have limited time. Let's talk about, first of all, birthright citizenship. Look, I only took 2 years of pre-law at the University of Michigan back in the late 90s. And I can tell you right now, I am fairly comfortable, even though I am not a lawyer and have not gone to law school and have never passed any bar exam, but that you cannot undo something that is in the United States Constitution when it comes to the guaranteed right of birthright citizenship by, frankly, just a signature on a piece of paper that is a presidential executive order. That is not going to fly. Once again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a constitutional scholar, but I'm fairly comfortable that there are going to be lawyers and judges that are going to sort that out. My hunch is that that was something that President Trump did to really speak to his base, that really raised that issue to him. But I don't think that's something that's going to, frankly, stand up in any court of law or even the U.S. Supreme Court that, frankly, skews obviously more conservative at this point, because I just think it's flatly just not. It's just not constitutional. And when it comes to the ICE orders, I mean, I still have to read because obviously, as you said, there were a flurry, over 50 executive orders. So frankly, folks like myself, we're trying to do the best that we can to keep up and understand exactly what's going on back in Washington, D.C. But I am concerned about the notion of creating a culture of fear in this country for many folks who have been here for a long time and have contributed to our economy and are part of the fabric of this nation. So, my perspective on this is, I understand that there are challenges when it comes to immigration. I understand the American people spoke loudly in wanting a more secure border. And I understand the notion of trying to make sure if there are people in this country that are violent criminals or gang members, trying to find a way to ensure that they are not allowed to remain in the United States, just as we wouldn't want gang members or violent criminals walking the streets if they were American citizens. But I think that we have to look at people who simply have come over here for the opportunity to work, many times to escape countries, frankly, to escape countries where with oppressive governments and dictatorships, in an attempt to just frankly do better for themselves, send home money to their families, and just simply live out the American dream. I think we have to take a look at that, because otherwise you're simply painting everyone with a broad brush. Every person's story is different, and we do not want the United States of America to just simply become a country that has a culture of fear built into it. So once again, if we're talking about violent criminals and people of that nature, I completely understand the desire to clamp down on folks who are in that category. But for folks who are just, trying to make a living and may have come across the border just to simply make a better life for themselves, escape an oppressive country, and earn enough money to send back home to their families, I think we have to approach this in a much more humane and compassionate way.
Our thanks to Corey Woods, the mayor of Tempe, Arizona, for making it plain for us. He is a leader among leaders as a part of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, Community Development Housing Committee. We know that affordable housing continues to be one of the biggest issues across the country, and we look forward to checking in with you in the future to learn more about the progress that's being made on the ground among our nation's mayors.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity, Doctor.
Absolutely. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580, the quiet part out loud when we come forward.
Is A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Oh no, stomach issues again?
Stomach issues?
Who are you?
Your pancreas. I could be the real reason for your diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose oily stools.
I thought it was my stomach.
People often do, but any of these symptoms could mean having a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and speak with your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
The new year brings new health goals and wealth goals. Protecting your identity is an important step. Your info is in endless places that could expose you to identity theft, leading to lost funds. LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second. If your identity is stolen, our restoration specialists will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Resolve to make identity health and wealth part of your New Year's goals with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year with promo code NEWS. Visit lifelock.com. Terms apply.
Sometimes I struggle to get to sleep. My body stopped for the day, but my mind is still running. so I take ZQuil.
ZQuil, the world's #1 sleep aid brand, has a range of non-habit-forming products to fit you and your family's needs. Invest in a great night's sleep for the best you tomorrow.
I'm awake and ready to take on anything.
Better days start with ZQuil nights. Explore our products at ZQuil.com. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
As a mom, comforting my family is what I do best. Vicks Vapor Stick provides soothing, non-medicated Vicks vapors in an easy-to-apply stick. And it dries fast, so there's no mess. I use it to comfort myself and my family.
Thanks, Mom.
Vicks Vapo Stick, soothing comfort for the whole family. And when you need more comfort for yourself, try Vicks Vapo Shower Max for steamy Vicks vapors.
Use as directed. Vapo Stick for use ages 4 and up. Vapo Shower Max use for adults only.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Imagine a Los Angeles where everyone can thrive, where communities have access to the resources they need to succeed. That's the vision of Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. They're dedicated to improving life in LA County by providing educational support, employment assistance, and spaces for community engagement. By 2050, they want LA to be the best place to connect, create, learn, live, and play. They're working toward an education system that's well-resourced and culturally responsive, becoming a hub for artists and innovators, and making sure everyone has access to healthy food, quality healthcare, and safe housing. It's about building a future where we all have the chance to succeed. We invite you to learn more about their mission and get involved with Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We face tragedy, but we don't fall into despair. We continue our work to build a more perfect union.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and it's about that time. It's about that time and afternoon drive time. It's that time for the quiet part out loud. A lot of heads have turned over Trump's pardoning of some of the January 6th folks convicted of being a part of the January 6th insurrection. And as reported by Politico, Trump may come to regret his January 6th pardons. Now, just to set the stage, do you know exactly who he pardoned? Do you know who he pardoned? I mean, yeah, it's been reported that he's pardoned roughly 1,500 people, and a lot of people are still stunned by that. But the recipients of Trump's generosity include Enrico Tarrio. He's a one-time leader of the Proud Boys who was convicted of sedition and serving a 22-year sentence. Or how about Stuart Rhodes, the founder of the Oath Keepers, who was serving an 18-year sentence for his involvement in the January 6th insurrection, and about 600 people who had been charged with assaulting or resisting law enforcement officers, including more than 170 who were charged with using a deadly or dangerous weapon or seriously injuring an officer. Plenty of people, of course, were convicted of nonviolent offenses, but the notion that January 6th was a peaceful day, the notion that it was a day of love, as President Trump has called it, we want to be explicit. That is an abject lie. In fact, I was here in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, 2021. I had friends that were working in the Capitol. And I actually drove over to the Capitol because I was concerned for them. And so I saw with my own eyes what was happening on the Capitol. I'd never seen anything like it. It was not a day of love. There was nothing peaceful about it. And so if history is any guide, as reported by Politico, this is not likely to be the last time that you hear about these people. Yes, we know that Trump promised to free the January 6th defendants on the first day, his first day back in office, and he's followed through on that promise. But guess what? This isn't going to be a one-day story. It's not going to be a one-day story for Trump, and it's certainly not going to be a one-day story for the Republican Party. They may actually come to regret the political cost of this decision. You know why? Well, it's just not that popular among the electorate. After the election, multiple polls reported that somewhere around 2/3 of Americans opposed Trump's promise to pardon the January 6th defendants, including about 2/3 of independents. And so this may be one way to get on the wrong foot. And by the way, it's not just 2/3 of Americans polled, 2/3 of independents. Also, the police union that endorsed Trump has blasted his January 6th pardons. The group says that they're deeply discouraged by pardons and commutations made by both Biden and Trump administrations of individuals convicted of killing or assaulting law enforcement officers. The group said in a statement that they firmly believe that those convicted of such crimes should serve full sentences. But this is what's happening between the lines, as reported by Axios. The group did not specifically mention which pardons they were referring to, but the only ones issued in the second Trump administration concerning violent assault is January 6th. So even you have the police union. The Fraternal Order of Police, which is the largest police union in the United States, and the International Association of Chiefs of Police, they're even playing politics. There's sort of this false equivalency between Biden's pardons and Trump's pardons, as if Biden pardoned any January 6th insurrectionist. This is where we're at. And now you're in the know. When we come forward in our second hour, I'm really looking forward to stretching out with another leader on the front lines, but this time in Altadena. Erica Alexis, also known as the Lady Builder, is the founder and owner of Bridgeline Development and Construction, and she's already rolling up her sleeves to be a part of the rebuild of Altadena. We're going to talk to her and get the skinny on the latest coming out of that community. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. Police now say 2 people are dead and 2 others are injured after a shooting at a Nashville, Tennessee high school this morning. They add 2 female students were shot by a 17-year-old male student. The shooter then turned the gun on himself. Black Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass is issuing an emergency order to prepare burn areas for rain, directing crews to clear debris, shore up hillsides, and